Oh, hello everybody. It's that time again. We are busy working on the demand function within Excel, bringing the best of Excel to the party and. You know, I love Excel. So this is working in the demand function. We've done the demand function. There's 3 videos on the demand function within Excel. You're welcome to go and have a look at it. And today our attention shifts to the supply function. But before that, please go and like, subscribe, and share these videos. Share my channel. Please support the channel. It costs you nothing, and it helps a lot. It really does make a huge difference. So please, 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 let's go it together. So the supply function. Remember, there's my demand function. And I'm not going to go for the demand function. We're expanding constantly on the spreadsheet. So we're continuously expanding, building, etc., etc. So there's going to be a fantastic functionality where we can do all sorts of things within demand and supply. Anyway, enough said of that. So same logic, same philosophy, same methodology as with the demand side, we're going to use with the supply side. Nothing different. Nothing different at all. Okay, so first of all, there's my quantity supply of product X. So that's what I want to calculate, my quantity supply of product X. It's my equal, and its symbol is Y or lambda. Okay, then there's my supply variables. Remember, variables are observable things in life, phenomenon in life, things that we can see, we can touch, we can feel, we can observe them. Okay, so first one obviously is the own price of product X. Okay, so supply, quantity supply is a function of the own product of X, the own product of product or service X. Input costs are obviously a major important variable. What I actually should do is to break this input cost up into wages, energy, and raw material, but for now, we just have it as input cost as such. Abbreviation is PC. Price of other goods the firm can produce, because in most cases, firms don't only produce one good or service, they do a couple. You go to the hair salon, you can do a manicure, a pedicure, you can do your nails, you can do hair, you can do facial, whatever the case might be. So it's the price of all other goods or services that the company can produce. And that is PO. Technology obviously makes sense. Natural conditions, if you're a farmer, obviously it makes huge sense. If you're mining operation, that makes huge sense, etc. And then seasonality, again, farming typically speaks to seasonality, etc., etc. Then government policy, taxes, subsidy, or regulation. A little bit bigger there, regulation. So we've identified, then obviously that these, the constant and the residual, they're not variables, but we always keep them in. As I said, the constant is, even if there's no factors influencing supply, there may still be some supply. I doubt it very much, but who knows? And then obviously residual is everything else that influence quantity supply except these variables. Okay, so that's my function up to there, but obviously as when you do the equation and the calculations, we include the constant and the residual. So once we've identified our variables that we're going to work with, we've abbreviated our variables that we're going to work with, the next is to identify the nature of this relationship, i.e. the sign of each of these variables. What is the relationship between those variables and quantity, supply or supply? So that's flipping important. Okay, so that's important. So as I said, our y variable, our dependent variable, that thing that we're going to calculate is equal. Own price, we've got a minus here. Now, obviously, that's wrong. It must be a positive. Okay, oopsie, sorry. It must be, okay, so we put the little sign with a positive, and it assumes it's a text and not a equation. Okay, so own price is a positive sign. Think about it. The higher the price, the more you'll supply. Why? Because the more money you make. Logic. Okay. Input cost would be exactly the opposite. As the cost of production increase, you'll produce less. You'll supply less. So that's a negative sign. Prices of other goods that you produce is negative. So if the demand for the other products you produce increase, you're going to rather produce more of those items, meaning move resources, move operations to that specific product or service and not the one that is not selling. So that is a negative sign or inverse. So these two are inverse. Technology is obviously a positive because it decreases the cost of production. Natural conditions could be plus or minus depending on your product and also depending how you define natural conditions. If you're a farmer and you like hot weather and you define natural conditions with temperatures, then it's positive. If you're a farmer, you prefer cold weather and you define natural conditions with temperature, then it's inverse or negative. So it all, and the same with seasonality. So these two are ambiguous. They could be either positive or negative. It all depends on the product that you're looking at, the thing that you're going to supply, and obviously how you define natural conditions and seasonality. Okay, so that's quite important to understand and to be able to identify whether it is indeed a positive or negative. And then government policy can also be a positive and negative. In general, taxes are negative. Taxes are negative. Subsidies are positive. And regulation could be either negative or positive, depending whether that regulation benefits you or don't benefit you. If it benefits you, it's positive. If it doesn't benefit you, it's negative. So again, we should actually disaggregate this into three different variables. Same with this one here. But for now, let's just look at them as a collective, as an individual item, individual variable. Okay, so there's my variables. There's the abbreviation. There's my signs. Then for each of them, I give a symbol or a coefficient. And this coefficient again is the size of the relationship. And again, the size is important. The smaller the coefficient, the smaller the size, the less the relationship. More vague, if you want to call vague, and vice versa. So this is quite important. So again, this is setting it up, and then we have to go and put values to our coefficient and then values to our variables, and we are off to the races. So in this case, I assume the own product is the value of the coefficient is 2 plus 2. The value of the coefficient for input cost is 0.6, but it's minus because the sign is minus, so it's minus, which is the nature of the relationship, and 0.6. So the value of the coefficient combined is minus 0.6, but the size is 0.6. Same with prices other goods. Technology is 2, natural conditions is positive 0.8, seasonality is positive 0.4, and government policy is positive 2. Where do I get these? Some suck numbers. It may be totally off the hook, meaning could be totally wrong, or it actually could be close. I have no idea. I would very much doubt that this is very close. I would think this is way off the mark. Way off the mark, but hey, this is illustrative purposes only. Then we assume values for the variables. So I assume the price of my variable is X. Now, why am I assuming price of the variable X is 5? Because in my demand, I have the price of the variable also 5. So I assume from the beginning that I am in equilibrium. Okay, demand is equal to supply. You'll see them. I've calculated these variables. I set them up, the coefficients and the variables. I set them up so that the price is 5 and the quantity supply is 67. And you'll see it's exactly the same, 5 and 67. So I assume that I'm working in general equilibrium. General, this is partial equilibrium. It's not general equilibrium. General equilibrium is where everything is equilibrium. Here I only assume general partial equilibrium. Nonetheless, topic for later. Later. So price 5, quantity supply 76. So I've manipulated these values to get to 67. 76, sorry. So that's how I got to some of these variables. Okay. So my base is therefore 67, which is 2 times 5 plus minus 0.6 times 8 plus minus 0.4 times 16, etc. You'll see here, they are all multiplied. Okay. So that gives me 76. Okay. That's obviously my scenario. If I want to change something, that is where I'm going to change it. So if I say the input cost increases from 8 to 12, for example, that means input cost increased by 4. If the input cost increased by 4, so negative sign, my supply will decrease by 74, and that will create a shortage. And elasticity of supply of input cost is inelastic 0.06. So it's not very sensitive. This product is not very sensitive at that price for changes in price. Okay, so same as with the demand function, there's my function expressed as my variables and then expressed then as a expression or an equation where I just add the variables. Okay, so there's my function, which is just listing of all my variables, and then obviously from the function I go to my expression or my equation where I add the coefficients and the signs, meaning I add from the function, adding my nature of the relationship and size of the relationship. I move into my expression of my equation, and then I can just substitute within my expression or equation. I can substitute the values of my variables, and then I can calculate quantity supply, which is this value. Then I keep that now constant. Keep that constant. You'll see I keep that constant. I don't change it. So with my base scenario, I use the scenario variables. Again, the coefficient, but not multiplied my original values by multiplied by my modified variables. And I said what I do is I change, you don't have to change it one by one here, just for calculating what the supply impact will be. You can do it multiple times. I can put in there, it increases to 20. So the combination of those changes means that supply decreases from 76 to 72, meaning there's a shortage. Do you remember 76 is equilibrium? But I can't do the interpretation of the elasticities because I don't know of this amount, how much of that is influenced by input cost or how much are influenced by the price of other items. Okay, so for elasticity, I have to do them individually. Ceteris paribus, remember the ceteris paribus rule when I do my elasticities. Okay, so let's quickly, so that is when that changes. Let's keep that 8. Let's say my technology, there's a technology boom and it goes to 20. You'll see it, the 12 there changes from 76 to 100, so that's quite sensitive. So if I make that to 9, basically stays the same. That changes the same. That 1 increase causes a 2 increase in supply. Okay, which is inelastic still. So there is the basic, let's go back to 8. There's my basic setup of my supply function. And then with that basic supply function, assuming these initial values, I can calculate my quantity supply, base quantity supply, and I can calculate my scenario supply. If the scenario supply is more than the base, then I have a surplus. If the scenario supply is less than the base, then I have a shortage, because I assume that the 76 is equilibrium. Okay, so I hope that works. Then obviously there's my elasticity calculations. And remember, my elasticity calculations I have to use, I can only change one variable because of the ceteris paribus rule. Okay, then from my expanded function and expression and equation, I can reduce them to my standard supply, or my normal supply function and supply expression or demand. Okay, so basically what I mean when I reduce them, I basically just uh, 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 calculate all the variables that's not price, and I add those variables to my constant. So I collapse government policy, seasonality, natural resources, technology, price of other items, price of input costs. I collapse them, meaning I put the values in there and I calculate those values and I add it to my constant, so that I sit with this equation. So that is what reducing means. Okay, so that's reduce. So once I've got my reduced formula or expression, I can now calculate my supply curve and my price. And I do the same as previously. So at this page, my parameters, my constant is 0. It is 0. So I assume there's no constant here. So in that case, that constant is 0. That one there is 0. Okay. So if I reduce it, meaning I calculated the input cost, the price, technology, I calculate all those variables by multiplying them, and then I add it to my 0 constant. That the reduced variables is 66. So I've taken the 0 plus the 66, and my new constant is 66. Okay, sign is positive, coefficient is 2, the own product is 5, 2 times 5 is 10, 10 plus 66 gives me 76, which is that variable there. So that's 66 plus 2 with what's my beta? My beta is 2, my coefficient is 2. What is the price of x? The price of x is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times alpha is 66. Gives me my quantity supply. Quantity supply of x is 76, which is same as equilibrium. Same as equilibrium. That's why I assumed all these variables in its base format will add up to 76. Okay, so I hope you get where I get the 0 and why I get the 66. I said the 0 is the constant. I assume my constant is 0. So no price, no seasonality, nothing. There will be nothing. There will be no supply of it. There will be no quantity supply of it. If I calculate my input cost, which is 0.6 times 8, I calculate the price of that, 0.4 times 16, and I add those values, I get to 66. You'll see there 66 is those values except the own price and the constant, because here I have that value of 0. If I include the 0 there, that will be double counting. 66, and then I can calculate that. And there's my supply curve. So again, I've put a range here so that it is the 5 and less than 5 and the 5 and more than 5 based on this range, so that I have multiple variables to plot, price variables to plot, and then obviously I use the same range to calculate my quantity supply. Why is this quantity demand? That must be quantity supply. Sorry, one or two major things that I have to just Make sure I got it right. And there we go. Okay, so there is my quantity supply. 76, 76. However, this quantity supply must be here. That mustn't be this. It's C. Let me just quickly go do this. Select the data. That quantity supply. This C, sorry. Because they are exactly the same, so let's quickly change the quantity supply. Let's make it, technology goes to 20. You see the supply increase from 76 to 100. You see, there we go now. There's my original supply, and there's my new supply. Yeah, that's correct. And obviously, this movement to the right means there's an increase in supply, which is increase in supply, which is now a surplus. Okay, price 5, so my revenue or turnover is 380, and now 5, my new turnover is 500. It's increase because technology is inelastic. So you can have a look through that as well. There is the original price, because the price haven't changed. The price is still the same. And there's my quantity, my supply curve. My supply curve has increased to the right, which is that. So let's quickly keep that now out. Let's change the price. So if my price increased to 8 Rand, okay, then my supply will increase from 76 to 82, again a surplus. Let's quickly have a look. You'll see my supply curve haven't changed. The only thing that has changed is that my price have moved from the 5 Rand to the 8 Rand. But my supply curve still stays exactly the same. So the price, when the price of the own price change, it will be a movement on the demand curve or movement on the supply curve. But the demand curve or the supply curve won't change. So remember, there's movements or there's variables that influence quantity and of demand and supply, and there's variables influence demand and supply. Own price is the only variables that influence quantity movement on the curve. All the other variables influence either the demand curve or the supply curve. Okay, so that's also important to understand. So there's my supply side function. I said exactly the same as demand side, just working on the supply side. The big obviously issue is that the sign of the price of own price now becomes positive and not negative, so that the supply curve is upward sloping. It's positive sloping. It's not downward sloping. And there it is. The rest of the spreadsheet is exactly the same as demand side. So demand side, I had 3 videos. Supply side, I'm just going to have the 2 videos because I'm not going to go through the setup of the sheet itself. That's similar to the demand side. So there we go. Straightforward, nothing to it. So if we make that 5 again, let's do that. So let's make government policy, there's a shock, it becomes 1. Then you'll see the base supply decreases. Now it's a shortage, it's inelastic. It's a movement inward. So there's my original supply curve. You'll see there's my original. And there's my new supply curve, or my scenario-based supply curve. You'll see supply F decrease. Now, price is still exactly the same. And now total revenue F decrease. And supply is inelastic. And there we go. That is demand. That's the supply side. So there's my demand side. And there's my supply side. And I've made my initial values. I assumed my initial values so that I'm in equilibrium. I'm in equilibrium. Okay, so what's happening next? Next, we're going to do the equilibrium, where we can bring them all together. And I've started working on that spreadsheet. You'll obviously see it's now, there's all the demand side variables. There's all the supply side variables. And I assume exactly the same way I should see there. Own price, 5 Rand. Price of supply, own price, 5 Rand. Own price at demand, 5 Rand. And that gives me 76. Anyway, we'll do that in the next video. For now, there's my supply side, or let's say there's my demand side, there's my supply side, and obviously now we're going to work on general or partial equilibrium, the equilibrium for this product or service. Okay, I hope you're still happy to make the spreadsheet available when it's done and dusted. So if you're interested, you want to do some of the work yourself, play around with it, just pop me an email and I happily make the spreadsheet available once it's done. Okay, but you're more than happy to get it. So that's my supply side. Just by the way, these variables may or may not, same principle as with demand side, these variables may or may not be relevant to the supply of that product. And these signs and these coefficients, they all assumed, not the signs, but the values here are all assumed. Okay, so important to remember that. So let's park there for now, and we'll be back. Yeah, okay. Thank you again, and please, please, please remember to like, subscribe, share. Your support is truly valuable and appreciated. With that said, I'll see you on the other side.